Hi, this is going to be a new sub-series under knowledge, faith and knowledge. It's going to be called a response to Ron Wyatt's claims of finding the Ark of the Covenant, along with my personal findings and an experience I had regarding um, Ron's claims and regarding the Ark itself. So, Ron Wyatt, I stumbled across his videos about 4 years ago, back in 2014 probably, um, and maybe a little earlier. Started out, he claimed that he's showing pictures of the stuff he found on the bottom of the Red Sea, and it's not just Ron. There's other people that have found stuff like that too, but. Second century BC, third century BC Egyptian wheels, four-spoke Egyptian wheels that only came from the period of the time of the Egyptians, where the Bible happens to be the same time that the Bible says the Israelites were in Egypt. Finding a beach on the eastern shore the of Egypt, saying called even called at least up until the 80s, was still called the Waters of Moses Opening, being translated as the Waters of Moses Opening. I think it's Aramaic. Finding our like 15-foot huge stone like temple pillar with hieroglyphics and Jewish menorahs and all these things found. That's since gone into been removed, and a plaque has been put there by the Saudi or what Egyptian or Saudi government, whatever. But he also, finds claims he found this place called Purim, which is in Exodus. It's a place with 12 wells and 70 palm trees, according to the Bible, and sure enough, on Google Maps, I find it. So I'm kind of going through all his videos, and I got his videos open on one screen, and his and my Bible open in front of me, and then Google Images, Google Earth, Wikipedia, all the photo search engines. And my thought was, okay, if any of this guy's claims are false, I can write off him entirely and move on. And I can move on anyway, but if I just wanted to know if any of this is true, or if any of this is false. Rather, if any of this is false, I can I have an answer about who Ron Wyatt's claims. And obviously believing, when it started to hear all the stuff he found, and I was like, there's no way one guy could find all that stuff. He would have found more archaeology, important archaeology, some of the most important biblical archaeology ever found, and he would have found it all. One amateur guy with, this is ridiculous. But I started looking at his claims, and sure enough, everything he found, I could find online. I could find on Google Earth. I found photos of, tourists down in the little oasis of Purim, even the wilderness of the Sinai wilderness of Sin is still called the wilderness of Zin. I mean, so you start seeing this pretty clear path that the Israelites would have taken out to that beach where Moses, stretches out his arm or whatever, but beach is still there. There's an the there's if you look at the topography of the Red Sea, there's an underwater land bridge that where all those coralized wagon parts, chariot wheels, and things are all on the bottom. And then even going to the Mount Horeb, where the Bible says God gave a law to Moses on the tablets of stone, and came down as a fire on the top of the mountain, and Moses walked into the fire. And sure enough, there's actually, you can go look at Mount Horeb. It's all charred on top. I even did a zoom in, fly down. There's this rock that they think it was the actual rock Moses spoke to and struck, that where water came out of it, because there's this huge, like, 4-story stone in the middle of the desert on the top of this hill, and like the the residue or a dried river basin going all the way down straight from this rock, as if millions and millions of gallons of water just whoosh, came out. So you can see what they're talking about. There's photos for it. To say Ron Wyatt's claims of no evidence, I think, is a little biased. It's a little like intentionally ignorant. No, I can't say anyone who says that there's no evidence for Ron Wyatt's claims. I don't think they've looked into it very long, and it's understandable because of how extravagant the claims seem. So it's understandable that you just write it off and say, nah, it's not, this is too much for one guy. It's exactly what I did, and I'm a Christian, and I still did that. So it's not, I wrote them off, and I'm a believer. So if I could write them off, surely someone else could, right? So, but I got into his videos, and it gets to the point, and I was tracking along. I was like, man, this all makes sense. It's in the Bible. I'm seeing photos of these wagon wheels cut open. I'm seeing like Mount Horeb surrounded by chain link fence from the Saudi government. But I actually saw pictures of the stuff at Mount Horeb. The altars at the base, the 12-stone altar and the large altar where they would have made the calf and worshipped it, covered in, again, hieroglyphics, and the Saudis have it like chain link fenced around it, and so it's obviously a government protected site. It's very often visited by people, so it's pretty well known. It's probably better well known over there that these are legitimate sites than it is here. People in the United States seem to think these sites don't exist, that it's all myths, like they're somehow enlightened to know that, but it's more like being in a bubble. I think if you've actually traveled over there and seen some of this stuff, that you wouldn't be so, or people wouldn't be so ignorantly mocking it. I mean, there's obviously stuff over there that matches biblical accounts. You got to kind of take that into some consideration. But again, people don't really. Anyway, so I don't want to get sidetracked here. But basically, after watching a lot of his claims, he got to the part where he talks about how he ended up in Jerusalem digging under Golgotha. Found on January 6th, crawled in on January 6, 1982, crawls into this cave finds the Ark of the Covenant in a stone coffin, and even finds dried blood coming down from from a crucifixion site coming down through the roof of the cave, and taking it to a lab. He says he took up some of this dried blood, ended up taking it to an Israeli lab, and they analyzed it, and it was said they still found living blood cells. And that's about when I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm done. And I put it down. I didn't care how much matching evidence I had seen, photos of him digging, photos of rocks, and photos of the structures, tunnel structures he built to hold up the cave when as he's digging into this hill, and photos of him outside Golgotha and stuff. So I was like, this is ridiculous. I put it down. That was probably 2 years ago. And then for about a year, I didn't look, completely forgot about Ron Wyatt, biblical archaeology, probably as a whole, just kind of forgot about it, and got into playing basketball. And I was playing basketball with a group of these guys up at a church my brother kind of introduced me to, and we'd play on Thursday nights every night for 2 hours. And I met this one guy named Scott, African-American brother, who's just really into history and findings that most people write off, and just a lot of interesting stuff. He's talking to me about Moors. He believed he was a Moor, and we got talking about like signs of the end of the world and all this kind of interesting stuff. And I took him home one day. I got to be friends with him a little bit, and took him home from basketball. We were sitting outside his apartment one day, and he goes, "Man, you ought to check out these things about this, and this they found." And I said, "Man, yeah, dude, that's cool. I'll have to look at it. You should check out this guy named Ron Wyatt. He says he found the Ark of the Covenant under the the hill of Golgotha. So I'm telling this to, his name was Scott. He's like, I was telling this to Scott, and he's like, and I said, yeah, and he seemed interested. So I was like, yeah. They said he said that he crawled in there after a while, a couple months of digging, crawled in there on January 6, 1982, and found the ark. And for some reason, I remembered the exact date. Even to this day, it's one point of that of Ron's story that just always sticks in my head. But I mentioned the date, and Scott looks at me. He like turns to me like this, and he's like, his mouth just drops open. His eyes get like this big around, and he's like, he's just staring at me, and it just his look gave me chills. And I looked at him. I said, "Dude, what's wrong?" He said, "Dude, just keep telling your story. I'll tell you when you're done." And so I told him, yeah. He said he found the ark, and there was even some dried blood or whatever. And that's, I kind of took him as far as I really believed Ron. And I happened to mention that date though, and he goes, "Dude, you're not gonna believe what happened to me 2 weeks ago." I go, "What?" He said, "2 weeks ago I was walking through Military Park, which is this park in downtown Indy, and he said he looked down his phone and his phone died, and he's like, that's weird. It has a full battery, and then as his phone is dead and he's kind of fiddling with it or whatever, the lights start in the park start flickering." He said, "But they don't flicker like this, blink, 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 like they would." And I'm an double E electrical engineer, so you know if lights are on a circuit, they're going to blink together because they're all on the same circuit, unless they're on like a parallel circuit. You know, one can go out and the other not, like Christmas lights. But he said these he said they didn't go like blink, 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 blink. They went like this, blink, 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 blink. They toggled like someone was flicking a switch back and forth, and it caught my attention because it was intentional. There was someone was flicking a light and like signaling. And he said I looked down at my phone and I booted, and I was like, man, I tried to boot my phone back up. I boot my phone back up, and the boot up screen comes through. And as I'm looking at my phone, the date pops up on the screen like it does when you boot up. But guess what date it said? I said, what? He said, January 6, 1982. And he said, I knew there was something important about that, and I knew it. So I turned to my buddy who I was with. And I was like, man, there's something about this date. I don't know what it is. He said, and Scott tells me, he said, I've been praying for 2 weeks to know what that date means, and you're the answer to my prayer. And I just got so like excited. I rolled up my car windows and I said a prayer that God would like block any evil being from hearing our conversation. And I went on to talk with Scott about how it could play into the end of the world, how the Satan could, through the Antichrist, use the ark to deceive people into thinking he's really God. It could be part of God's master plan and letting the world nations that don't receive him be deceived or whatnot. Paul talks about the Antichrist stands in the place he ought not. Let the reader understand. Well, if you're the reader of that scripture, what's your understanding? How do you understand that? To me, I think immediately, well, he ought not to stand there. Why? He's standing in a place he ought not to. A human, where's the place on earth that a human ought not to, should not be? Oh yeah, the Holy of Holies. Oh yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. That's the one place that only one human was allowed to go into once a year. And even then, they had to go in with a blood sacrifice, and they tied ropes around the high priest's ankles in case he got killed, being in God's presence, that they could pull his body out. I mean, the Ark of the Covenant, this mercy seat of God, the one place where God would come down and be on earth, and deal with men, is the one place where a man ought not to try and take that position. So to me, immediately, I think the Ark of the Covenant has something to do with the Antichrist, where he would sit and make himself out to be God and deceive people. So that's kind of what happened to me and Ron Wyatt's claims. That got me, back into watching his videos and listening to his account, and slowly my mind opened up to the possibility that his claims might actually be true, um, which is pretty amazing because of how incredibly crazy they sounded at first. So I completely understand people that either Christian or not that see this and think this is ridiculous. There's no way he found all this stuff. This is better. This is like a more grandiose than Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail and all that stuff. And I'm like, and that's exactly what I thought too. Now 4 years later, I'm sitting here saying, nope. I think there really is something to it. I think there've been a lot of counterfeits, a lot of people that Satan used to kind of muddy the waters and make things so that when the truth happened, it would be confusing to people. Um, but anyway, I definitely feel God's personally made it a point for me to know that and kind of put his finger on it, like you need to pay attention to this right here. Just keep. It's not the primary thing in your life. It's not the most important thing you could do, but just note. This is true. He's done that with me with a number of things, including girls I've dated, intentionally shown me things, just brought me to places and done things in front of my eyes that I would never have thought possible, that were impossible to do without it being him, and not really explaining to me why he was doing that, but definitely I get the point. He's pointing at it, saying, take note. So anyway, that's what happened to me, and I'd like to, I'd be glad to talk to you about it and listen to your thoughts about how the ark plays into the end of the world, or maybe are things you don't understand or think could be false about it, and how I would explain it. It'd be neat to talk to you guys about it. So let me know your thoughts. Thanks. Hope this helps.